Hi, welcome to the C# programming step-by-step video tutorial. In this class, we are going to learn each and every concept using a small, simple program. You can see all the programs that we are going to write over the next few days. I assure you, you will master C# in just a few days and you will find it very easy to learn. So let us look at the various topics that we are going to learn in this course. Day 1, we will learn about the installation of the Visual Studio Express Edition, which is a free tool available to learn C#. We will start off the day with the Hello World program. We will continue the day with the C# syntax dealing with if-else statements, conditions, loops, various data types, and we will also touch on arrays and string manipulation. We will end the day with a few exercises and a quick review. We will start day 2 learning about class and objects and the use of the this keyword and constructors. We'll also learn about what makes a language an object-oriented programming language, and we'll also look at a few concepts like encapsulation and data hiding and overloading under polymorphism. We will end the day with a quick review. We will start day 3 with a small sample project using all the concepts we had learned up till this point. We will continue with the other object-oriented programming concepts like inheritance, overriding under polymorphism, and abstract classes and interfaces. Day 4, we will look into collections and the use of generics. We will also do a quick review of the topics, and we will continue the day with exception handling and implicitly typed variables. Day 5, we are going to look at lots of small topics like language integrated query, delegates and lambda expressions, use of sealed, constant, read-only, partial classes and methods, and also about ref and out, variable number of arguments, optional and named arguments, and reading and writing files. There are lots of tools available in the market to write C# code. The most famous and the recommended tool is the Visual Studio IDE. IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment, just a fancy name for like tool. It is used to develop applications, and in our case we are going to use the Visual Studio to write and practice C# code. Microsoft offers a free version of Visual Studio called Visual Studio Express. To download the Visual Studio Express, go to Google and search for Visual Studio Express, and you can go click on this link, and over here search for Visual Studio Express 2012 for Windows Desktop. You can click on download, and over here select your language and then click on install now. Click run, agree to the license terms and conditions, and then click on install. Now that the setup has been done, I'm going to click on launch. Now this Visual Studio Express Edition is free, but if you do not register it, it will expire in 30 days. So all you have to do for registering is you can go online and you have to log in with some Microsoft account. If you have a Hotmail account or a live.com account, or you can go create one, you can log in and you can get the registration key. Once you have the registration key, you can come and enter the product key, and then there is no expiry date for the Express Edition. Using the Express Edition, you are not allowed to create production level code. So for example, for this particular video, even though I'll be using the trial version, I have an MSDN subscription which will allow me to download the professional version. After installing the Visual Studio Express Edition, you can go to the Start, Programs, and select Visual Studio Express for desktop. You may be asked to register for this particular product. Otherwise, if you click on cancel, it will take you to the 30-day trial version. Now let us start by creating a new project. Click on File, New Project, and select Visual C# on the left hand side. And here you will see something called as a console application. Select console application, and let's give the application as my first project. And here the location of the project, I have created a folder under C drive. So let's click on browse, and under C drive I have created a folder called C#, under which I have a folder called project. So I'm going to select that. Of course you can do it in the default location too, that's fine, and click on OK. So we now have a solution called my first project, under which there is a console application project called my first project. By default, the project comes with something called as a program.cs that you see right here. We don't want that. We will create our own program. So let us right click and delete it. Now in this my first project, let us create a folder. So right click on my first project, click on add, and then click on new folder, and let us give a folder name something like day1.examples. In this day1.examples, let us create a class file. Now don't worry about what a class is and all those things, we will learn about it later, but for now just remember that to write programs in C#, we have to create something called as classes. Right click, add, and then click on class. Here by default it will select class, so we can give a class name like say example1. Remember, class names always start with a capital letter and the other words will be lowercase, and the second word will also start with the capital letter. So for example, example1 will be like E capital and O capital. Click on add. To make the text bigger, all you have to do is keep the control key pressed and use the roller on your mouse. Now in this class called example1, type this thing called static void main. Type this statement, static void main. Now don't worry about what the statement stands for, we will learn about it very soon. And make sure that your main M is capital, and also when you open a curly brace, you should always close that particular curly brace. Press enter here. Now if you want to print something to the console in C#, the syntax is console dot writeLine. Now while typing in this Visual Studio, to make sure that you are typing correctly, when you type in console and you press dot, it should give you something called as an IntelliSense. That is, it should give you all the methods that are there in console, like console.writeLine. This should pop up. If you give some kind of a spelling mistake like console dot, you can see that it will not give you any kind of IntelliSense. Also make sure that the console is C is capital. So console.writeLine and open parenthesis, within double quote you can type in any statement and it will be printed to the console. So I'm going to say semicolon. Make sure that you save your particular program and then you click on debug, start without debugging. You can see that it will print out hello world to the console, and then you can close this particular screen. Congratulations, you have written your first C# program. Now one of the confusing things for any new programmer is when do you put the semicolon and when do you not put the semicolons. You will get used to the syntax very soon, like by the end of this course you will be like well versed as to when to put this semicolon and not, so do not worry about that. But for now just remember that there will not be any semicolons right next to classes, there will not be any semicolons right next to the main methods, nor semicolons after these curly braces. Also on top you will see something called as using statements as well as namespaces. Do not worry about using statements for now. But namespace is nothing but where that particular class file is located. For example, when you look at this namespace saying my first project.day1.examples, it says that this class file called example1, it is located in a project called my first project under a folder called day1.examples, as you can see here. Next example, imagine we want to add two numbers. Now to add two numbers, we need to declare two numbers. So here I have declared two numbers called integer x equal to 10 and integer y equal to 3. This x and y are called variables. That is, a variable can hold any data. Integer is used to hold whole numbers. Of course, the next question will be like, okay, what if I want to hold a decimal value or a text or anything like that? Well, we will look at all the various data types later on, but for now, remember that if you want to hold a whole number, that means you have to use the data type integer. So here I have integer result equal to x plus y, and now let us print out the result. Console.writeLine, and within parentheses I'm going to say result. Now we can run this particular application like this. Click on debug, start without debugging, and here you will see that the hello world and the number 13 is printed. Now if you want to print out like result equal to this particular result, we can also use something called as concatenation. Within double quotes I will say like result equal to, and then I will use the plus sign. Now this plus sign is called a concatenator. That means in the console.writeLine I can have some kind of a text and some value here, and it will join both these things and it will present it to the user. You can run this by debugging, start without debugging, and you can see that result equal to 13 has been printed. Now you may be wondering like, okay, you have this plus sign, how do I subtract or multiply or divide? Well, let us take a look at a few of the operators that you will be using. So here you have this plus sign, a minus subtraction sign, the asterisk is the multiplication sign, and this is the divisional sign. Now this is what you call a modulus operator. Now what is a modulus operator? Now here we have something called as x mod y, that is 10 mod 3. Now 3 goes in 10 3 times, that is 3 3s are 9, and then the remainder is 1. So the mod of x mod y or 10 mod 3 is 1. So if you click on debug, start without debugging, you will see the result as 1. Also, while printing to the console, we can make use of something called as a placeholder. That means, now if you take a look at this console.writeLine, within double quotes I have something called as curly braces 0 plus curly braces 1 equal to curly braces 2. And after that I have a comma x. So that means this x will go into the 0 location, y will go into the 1 location, and whatever is here after this comma, that is the sum of x and y, will go into the location number 2. So while printing, it will say like 10 plus 3 is equal to 13. Now whenever we are programming, it is a good habit to give comments. Comments give explanation about that particular program so that when others look at your program, it will be easier for them to read. For single line comment, just put 2 double slashes and then type in whatever you want, like my first program. And for multi-line comments, you can say slash asterisk, and then you can say asterisk and slash. Multi-line comment. A quick look at the Visual Studio screen. At any time while working on these particular programs, if you feel like you accidentally close the Solution Explorer or some other window and you want to get them back, click on View and you will see a list of views here, a list of windows. You can click on View, Solution Explorer, and you can bring back the Solution Explorer back here. And if you close your particular project and you want to open your old project and you don't know where exactly you saved your project, you can always click on File, Recent Projects and Solutions, and then select your particular project. And for some reason, if you feel like you misplaced the window over here or over here, and if you feel like, okay, I want to send it back to this corner, to move your window, you can click on this particular tab over here and drag it. You will see something like this. If you click on the center, it will be the center screen. If you go to the right, it will be the rightmost screen, and this is the bottom screen. So I can go to the right here, or if you want, you can go to the rightmost screen over here and then place it. Then you can also resize your screen like this. Go hover around it, click and drag. Next, let us learn how to create an if statement in C#. So right click on the folder, add class, example if, and over here static void main, curly brace, press enter, and then close curly brace. I have two variables here, integer x equal to 10 and integer y equal to 20. The syntax of an if statement looks like this. If x is less than y, open and close curly braces, and you can have any number of statements here. Let's print out console.writeLine x is less than y. So similarly, we can have multiple if statements. So here I am checking if x is greater than y, and if x is greater than y, print out x is greater than y, and here I am checking if x and y are equal to each other. The way you find out equal is the symbol equal to equal to. Now if I save this and then run it, debug start without debugging, you will see that there will be some build errors. The reason for the error is this. If you read the error here in the error list, myfirstproject.exe has more than one entry point defined. What it means is this particular project called myfirstproject has more than one class with the main method. Of course it does, because if you remember, we created an example1 with the main method, and we also have this example if with the main method. So what we can do now is we can right click on example1, the older class file, and click on exclude from project. Once you click on exclude from project, what will happen is it will disappear from the project, and at any time you want to see it, all you have to do is in the solution explorer click on show all files. When you click on show all files, you will see that the example1 is present, but it is hidden. It is not part of the project. Now if you click on debug start without debugging, you will see that the answer is x is less than y. But this is not an efficient way of writing an if statement. The reason is it will come here and will check if 10 is less than 20, that is x is less than y. It will print out x is less than y. Then it will go and check once again if x is greater than y. Now once x is less than y, it is not going to be greater than y. But still, since you have multiple if statements, it is going to keep checking for these conditions. So the best way to write this if statement is by joining them using an else condition. That is, now what happens is, once the compiler comes here, it will check if x is less than y. If x is less than y, then it will not even check the other two conditions because x is less than y. Next, we are going to learn about the for statement. I have here a class called example4 in which I have the static void main method. A for statement has three parts. The first part is called the initial value, the second part is called the condition, and the third part is called an incrementer or decrementer. So in this example, imagine I'm going to print the value of I. So I have here I equal to I, and when I run this, you will see that it is printing I from 0 to 9. So the way it works is, the first time it comes into the for loop, the i's value is set at 0. It will check here if I is less than 10. Of course 0 is less than 10. Then it will come here and it will print out the console.writeLine I equal to 0. The next time it goes over, you will notice that there is something called as an incrementer or decrementer on the right hand side. Now what happens is, this I++ says that increment the value of I by 1. Now this I++ is a short form for writing I equal to I plus 1. Every time it comes into this particular loop, the value of I is incremented by 1 till the value of I reaches 9. Once it prints out 9, i's value is incremented to 10, but 10 is not less than 10, so it will come out of this particular loop. Of course, you can print up to 10 by saying I is less than or equal to 10. Of course, you can even decrement the values. You can give the initial value of I equal to 10, and then you can check if I is greater than or equal to 0, and then minus I every time it loops. The result you can see is i's value starts at 10 and it prints out till I reaches the value of 0. Now if you are curious about the various relational operators, that is, what are the other symbols that are there, you can take a look at this list of relational operators. This is two equal to sign is equal to, an exclamation and equal to sign is not equal to, greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, and less than or equal to. Next, let us take a look at the while loop. So in the while loop, we have here something like int x equal to 10, and then I have this while loop written like this. While x is greater than or equal to 0, do this, whatever is there within these parentheses. So while 10 is greater than or equal to 0, I want to print out the value of x, and then the next line I want to minus the value of x. X minus minus is nothing but x equal to x minus 1. So the first time it will print out x equal to 10, and then 10 minus 1 is 9, so it will come here and check, is 9 greater than or equal to 0? Yes, 9 is greater than or equal to 0, so it will come and print out x equal to 9, and then the next time it will print out x equal to 8, and so on, till x reaches the point of 0. Since 0 is equal to 0, it will print out x equal to 0, and then at one point of time it will become minus 1. Since minus 1 is not greater than 0, it will come out of this loop. So this is what you call a while loop. A while loop checks for a condition, and then if the condition is true, then it will print out, it will execute all the code within these parentheses. For example, if I change this minus 10, if I change this to minus 10, what would happen is this: is minus 10 greater than or equal to 0? No, it is not greater than or equal to 0, so it will not run even once. So if I want to run this, debug start without debugging, you can see that it did not run even once because I entered minus 10, and minus 10 is not greater than 0. But if I have a positive 10, debug start without debugging, you can see that it is printing from x equal to 10 up to x equal to 0. Next, let us take a look at the do while loop. So I have a class called do while with a main method, and in which I have like integer x equal to 10. The do while loop is written like this: do curly brace, in which I am printing out the value of x, and then the next line I am reducing the value of x, and now the while statement comes after the curly brace, while x is greater than 0, semicolon. Now let us run this and see. So you will see that it is printing from 10 to 1. So how did this work? Well, first it will come and assign the value of 10 to x, and then here it will come and print the value of x equal to 10. And then it will minus the value of x by 1, so x will become 9, and it will check while 9 is greater than 0, do this loop again. So you can see that the do while loop will loop till this while condition is met. So you may ask, like, okay, so what is the difference between the while loop and do while loop? If you notice, the while loop first checks for the condition, and then it prints out, like, runs the block of code. Whereas the do while loop will first execute the block of code, and then it will check for the condition. So you can see that even if the condition is wrong, like I have like integer x equal to minus 10, well, minus 10 is not greater than 0, even then this particular do while will execute this block of code, and only then it will come out of that particular loop. Debug start without debugging. You can see that even though the condition is wrong, it has executed the statement. So the do while loop will guarantee that it will run at least once, whereas the while statement will first check for the condition, and only if the condition is true, it will run this. Next, let us take a look at the concept of AND and OR. So I have a class called example AND and OR, in which I have a main method with two integer values, x equal to minus 10 and y equal to 10. Now let us write a program to check if both these values are greater than 0. So we can write an if statement like this: if x is greater than or equal to 0, and now I want to say, like, also check if y is greater than or equal to 0. So the way you do it is using an AND operator. The way you write an AND operator is to AND sign. So if x is greater than or equal to 0 and y is greater than or equal to 0, do whatever is there inside these curly braces. So here you can see that I have written if x is greater than or equal to 0 and y is greater than or equal to 0, print out console.writeLine both numbers are positive. Now for the OR statement, that is, even if one of these conditions is true, then the entire statement I want it to be true. So here I'm going to check else if x is greater than 0 or y is greater than 0, print out at least one number is positive, else print out both numbers are negative. In this case, this will fail because x is not greater than 0, but yes, if x is not greater than 0 but y will pass, so what will happen is this: it will come here and it will print out at least one number is positive. Here you can see that at least one number is positive, you can see. Now this and or will work even if you have one ampersand sign and one pipe symbol. You can find this pipe symbol on top of your enter button in your keyboard. Now these symbols, this and or, will work even if you have like one ampersand sign and one pipe symbol. Like this, if I run this, you can see that there is no difference in the output. So what is the difference between having two ampersand signs and two pipe symbol rather than one ampersand sign and one pipe symbol is, these things, the one with two ampersand sign is called an short and the one with two pipe symbol is called a short circuit or. Now the difference is this. Now when you have one ampersand sign, what happens is it will come and check if x is greater than 0, and even if x is not greater than 0, it will still look if y is greater than 0. Now this is not required, because if this condition fails, then it doesn't matter whether if y is greater than or equal to 0, because for and condition both must be true. So if you have a short and like this, two ampersand sign, what happens is this: if x is not greater than 0, as in this case, like since x is minus 10, it is not equal to 0, it will not even bother to check if y is greater than 0, because it doesn't matter even if y is a positive number, this entire statement fails. So a short and will save you that extra computation time that is required to check both the conditions. So this is the use of the short and short or. One more small feature of Visual Studio: if you have multiple classes open like this, you can close those classes individually by clicking on the X mark here, or you can right click on one class and say close all but this. That will close all the other class files. Next, let us take a look at the switch case statement. I have a class called example switch case with the static void main method, and in here I'm going to declare a string j equal to, like within double quotes, 2. String is used to hold any text value. Just like integers are used to store whole numbers, we can use string to assign text. So the switch case statement looks like this. You have something called a switch, and then you put this variable j within parentheses, and then within curly braces you have like various cases, like case 0, console.writeLine value is 0, then you have a break statement and all those things. And you also have something called as a default colon, and then you have some kind of a print statement, value not found, and then you have a break statement. So what happens here is this. So you have like string j equal to 2 and switch j, and over here you have various cases. So what will happen is it will check if you have any case which says 0, if this text matches any one of these cases. So in this case, case 2 matches, so what will happen is it will print out console.writeLine value is 2, and then it will break out of that particular switch case statement. It will end the program. Suppose you have something like xyz. What happens is, since xyz does not match any one of these cases, it will go to the default case, and then it will print out value not found. So a switch case is when you have some input value, and then you have like various conditions. Depending on the input value, it will go and execute that particular block of code. Now that you have seen like the integer data type and string data type, you may be wondering like what are the various data types in C#. C# has like lots of data types, and every data type has a particular range too. Like here, for example, you can use the byte data type for storing values from 0 to 255. Like that you have various other data types like unsigned short, integer, unsigned int, and all those things. Now for example, like for the integer data type, you can store from a range of -2 billion to a positive 2 billion. The unsigned int you can store from 0 to around 4 billion. Even though you have like a lot of these data types, let us take a look at the most important ones that you'll be using again and again. You'll be using like integer for storing whole numbers, and if you feel like the numbers are pretty long, you can use the long data type. For storing data with decimal values, you can use double, or you can use the decimal data type. The decimal data type store a very big number. For storing text value, you can use string, and for storing true or false values, you can use the bool data type. Next, let us take a look at the concept of arrays. Now, what are arrays? Let us imagine we want to store a bunch of data, homogeneous data. Here, I have a bunch of integers, like integer a equal to 10, integer b equal to 20. Then I have declared a few other integers like integer variables like c, d, e, and f, and then I have assigned some values. This is one way of declaring data, like you have a bunch of data. We can also declare data like variable names like this, like integer a1, a2, a3, and we can give some values for this a1, a2, a3, and a4 equal to 40, and so on. So here if you notice, I am declaring some integers, and for each and every integer I am giving a variable name. Same thing goes here. I am declaring variable names and I am assigning integer values. So I want to declare a bunch of data, all the data as integers. But is there an efficient way to declare this data instead of me going like integer a equal to 10, integer b equal to 20, or integer a1 equal to 10, a2 equal to 20, and all those things? Is there an efficient way of declaring data? Yes, there is, and that is called arrays. Let us take a look as to how to declare an array. To declare an array of integers, you write something like this: int, square brackets, then the name of the array, let's call it a, equal to, and within curly braces you declare all the numbers and semicolon at the end. So now I have an integer array called a with 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and 60. Now what happens when you declare something like this is, behind the scene, CSharp will create boxes to store these numbers like this. Since you have 6 numbers, CSharp will create 6 boxes. And in those 6 boxes, it will put all those numbers. Like you have 10 to 60, so CSharp will create 6 boxes and it will put those numbers 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 into those boxes. And it will label those boxes like this: a of 0, a of 1, a of 2, a of 3, a of 4, a of 5. You read this as a of 0, a of 1, a of 2. Because it is an integer array of a, it is called a of 1, a of 0, a of 1, a of 2. And remember, arrays always start with 0. Arrays always start with 0. It will not start with 1, it will start with 0. So once you have declared an array, now it's like as if we have all those data, a of 0, a of 1, and all those things. We can prove this by writing a print statement, console.writeLine. Let's print out a of 3. So what happens is a of 3 is nothing but a of 0, 1, 2, 3. That is a of 3 is 40, so 40 should be the printout. Let's run this, debug start without debugging. You can see that 40 has been printed. Same way, if you want to assign some value to a of 4 maybe, you can say, so here I have assigned a value a of 4 equal to 55, and then let us print out a of 4. So a of 4 should print out 55 now. You can see that a of 4 has printed out 55. So behind the scene, it has created variables like a of 0 up to a of 5. Now imagine I have an array like this and I want to print out all the values in the array. So how do we print out all the values in the array? We can print out all the values in the array using a loop. There are 2 different loops you can use. First we will use the regular for loop that we have learned. So to loop through the array, we can use a regular for statement. I have something like for int I equal to 0, I less than a dot length. A dot length will give you the number of elements in the array. Since there are 6 elements, a dot length will be 6. And remember, the array starts at 0. So we want to go from a of 0 to a of 5, not a of 6. So we have I less than a dot length, which is 6, I plus plus. So here in the console.writeLine, I'm going to print out this a and then the value of I, and then I have this square brackets equal to, and then whatever the value of I, I'm going to print it out right here. So this will print out the values, and this will just print out a of 0, 1, 2 and stuff like that. So let us run this. So here you can see that a of 0 equal to 10, a of 1 equal to 20. We are looping through the array and printing all the data in that particular array. Now, to loop through an array, we can also use something called as a for each loop. A for each loop is written like this. For each, then what type of data is there in that array? All this data is integer. So we say something like integer, some temporary variable in, and the name of the array, that is a. Curly braces, curly braces. Now I can say console dot. So what happens here is, the very first time the value of a will be the first number, and that will be passed to the int temp var, and it will come inside this particular loop and it will print out the temp var. So 10 will be printed. The next time it comes here, the second value of a, will be passed to the temp var. So you can see that every time this particular loop runs, the value of a is being passed one by one. First time 10 is passed to temp var, the second time 20 is passed to temp var, and the third time 30 is passed to temp var. So it will loop through all the data and will print out like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 and 60. To differentiate between these two outputs, let me say console.writeLine dash dash dash. So here you can see that 10, 20, 30, 40, 55, 60 is being printed. The reason 55 is being printed is we changed the data. We change the data right area of 4 equal to 55. Now, for declaring the array, it is not always necessary that you have to declare and give the values for the array right there. You can first declare the array and then later on give values too, like this. So here if you look at the syntax, I'm going to initialize the array and then I'm going to assign values. So I have like something like integer array of x equal to new int of 6. That means the array called x will have 6 numbers. So immediately C# will create those 6 boxes. But what will be the value inside those boxes? The default value for an integer array, if you don't assign any, is 0. So it will create those 6 boxes like this. It will label them as x of 0 to x of 5, and it will give you the default value as zeros. So you can later on assign any values too. So here I have x of 0 equal to 10 and x of 3 equal to 50. So what happens is x of 0 will be 10 and x of 3 will be 50. The rest of the values will still be 0. So now if we loop through this array, I'm going to loop through using a for each because it's much easier. I'm going to say like integer z, like some temporary variable, in x, the name of the array. So the first value of x will be like 10 and it will be printed here. And the second value will be 0, x of 1 will be 0, x of 2 will be 0, x of 3 is 50, the other numbers are 0 and it will be printed right here. We are looping through the x array. So let's run this. So here you can see that I have 10, 0, 0, 50, 0, 0. So we learned how to do arrays. First we were able to declare the array and the numbers, and it was able to create those boxes and assign those values. We also learned how to loop through the arrays. There are 2 different ways. Using a regular for loop, we can loop through the array, and we can also use the for each statement to loop through the array. And while declaring array, it is not required that we declare all the values in that array. We can just declare the array and then later on assign values. If we don't give values, the default values will be taken. Next, let us learn how to manipulate text or string manipulation. Imagine I have a string x equal to David Beckham. I can manipulate this particular string value like this. I can say like console.println hello within double quotes and plus x. So this is what we call string concatenation, where I am appending the word hello to this x value. So this will print out hello David Beckham. And this particular x, which is nothing but a string, comes with lots of inbuilt methods. You can see those inbuilt methods like this. You can say x dot, and here you can see all the methods that are available for you. Imagine I want to convert all the text in this string to uppercase. All I have to do is say to upper. So you have something like a to upper method, open and close parenthesis. So this x dot to upper will print the text in uppercase. Same way you have another method called substring, x dot substring of 2. Now what is the substring of 2? Now when you say string x equal to David Beckham, what happens is internally CSharp will create an array of x and put each and every character in one of the boxes like this. And it will label those boxes like this. Since it is string x, it will label it as x of 0, x of 1, x of 2 till x of 12, since there are 13 characters. So when you say console.writeLine x dot substring of 2, what happens is it will take from the second position and it will print everything till the very end. The second position is nothing but v, so it will print out vid Beckham. So when I say console.writeLine x dot substring of 4, 5, what will happen is from the fourth position it will take 5 characters. The fourth position is D, and from here it will take 5 characters, that is D space BEC. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You also have other methods like x dot index of, and you can give any character here. So what will happen is it will go in search of the character, the first occurrence of the character called V, and it will print out that particular index number. So here you can see that V occurs at position number 2, so the printout will be 2. And you can simply ask for what is there in x of 1, 2, because it is an array behind the scene. So x of 1 will print out x of 1, you have the value a. So these are the various methods available for manipulating string. So let us run this, debug start to the. So here you can say hello David Beckham, and then the David Beckham is in uppercase. The x dot substring of 2 will print vid Beckham, and substring of 4, 5 will print out d space bec, and then this is 2 and the letter a. We can also create string arrays like this. So here I have like string array of y, and I have 3 values 1, 2 and 3. So this will create 3 boxes, that is y of 0, y of 1, y of 2. And once you have a string array, you can loop through the string array. I have this for each statement or a for statement. For each string, some temporary variable like z or whatever in y, and then you are printing out z. So the very first time the value of z will be 1, the second time the value of z will be 2, third time it will be 3. You can see the printout right here. Also, sometimes when you're working on an application, you may get some numbers as a string. Like a user may input a number in a text box and you may receive that number as a string. But once you have a number as a string, you cannot manipulate it. You cannot divide this number because it is considered a text. So how do we convert a number which is basically a string into an actual number? So is there a way to convert these numbers into integers or double values so that we can manipulate them? Yes, we can. For example, imagine I have a variable called integer g. I cannot say int g equal to age. This will not be acceptable because age is text. But what we can do is we can use an inbuilt class called convert like this. Convert dot. Now if you want to convert it to an integer, we can say dot to int, and there are different types of ints like to int of 16-bit, 32-bit, 64-bit. Let us do 32-bit, to int of 32, and within parentheses we will give this particular text value. So what happens now is this text 34 is converted into integer. Once we have the integer, we can manipulate the integer. We can say like g divided by 2, that is divide this age by 2 and print out the answer. Same way we can convert this particular salary, which is a double number, using convert.toDouble. Convert.toDouble of salary. And now once we have that double number, we can manipulate it by multiplying it with 0.02 or anything and print it out. So let us run this. So here you can see that 34 divided by 2 is 17, and here we have multiplied the salary with 0.02 and you have the answer right here. So you can convert numbers that are available to you as text into actual numbers. Let us do a quick review of all the topics we learned till now. We first learned how to create a project by clicking on File, New Project, and we selected Console Application. The reason we selected Console Application is because we wanted to practice small programs to learn C#. Then we went and created a folder to store all our C# code. We created a folder by right-clicking on the project, clicked on Add and then New Folder, and we gave the folder name. And inside the folders we were able to create classes by right-clicking on the folder, click on Add Class, and then we gave a class name, clicked on Add. And once we created the class, we created this method called static void main method. Of course, we still haven't seen the concept of class and methods. We will learn that later. In our very first program, we learned how to print to the console. If you want to print anything to the console, all you have to do is say console.writeLine and within double quotes say hello world or whatever text that you want to print. If you want to add, subtract, divide numbers, you can declare two numbers like integer x equal to 10, integer y equal to 3, and then we can say like integer result equal to x mod y. And then you can concatenate string by printing out console.writeLine result equal to whatever is there within these two double quotes will be printed as it is, and it will concatenate it with the result. We also learned how to give comments to the program. If you have a single line comment, you put two double slash. If you have multi-line comment, it is slash asterisk, and then you can put asterisk slash here at the very end. We learned how to do an if statement. We have two variables here, integer x equal to 10 and integer y equal to 20, and we can write an if statement. If x is less than y, then do everything within this curly braces. Else if this condition fails, go and check if this condition passes. In this case, since x is less than y, it will print out x is less than y. Our next example, we learnt about the for loop. For loop has three parts: the initial value, the condition, and then the incrementer or decrementer. The initial value is the first value for this I. So when you come here, it will print out I equal to 10. Then every time it goes through the loop, it will reduce or increment the value of I till this condition becomes false. So it will loop through as long as this condition is true. When I is equal to 10, yes, I is greater than or equal to 0, so it will come here and will print it. But at one point of time when I becomes minus 1, since minus 1 is not greater than 0, it will come out of this loop. Another loop we learnt is the while loop. In the while loop, we first check for the condition while x is greater than or equal to 0. As long as this condition is true, it will execute the code within these curly braces. Now similar to while is the do while. The difference between while and do while is the do while will first execute the code and then check for the condition, whereas the while statement will check for the condition and then execute the code. So do while guarantees that this code will run at least once. For example, minus 10 is not greater than 0, but this code will run at least once. Next, we learnt about using the and or conditions. If you want to check more than one condition, you can use the and or. If you want all the conditions to be true for this entire statement to be true, then you use this and symbol. Here you read it as x is greater than or equal to 0 and y is greater than or equal to 0, then print out both numbers are positive. So in this case, since y is greater than 0, at least one number is positive will be printed. Next, we learned about switch case. You can do switch case for any data type like integer, double, and all those things. In this case, we are doing switch case with a string data type. We have a string j equal to xyz, and here it will go in search of the case that matches this xyz. If it does not match any of these cases, it will go and execute the default case. In this case, value not found will be printed. Our next example dealt with strings. We learned how to manipulate strings. You can concatenate string. You can use the inbuilt methods in string to convert it to an uppercase or lowercase. We can also find the substring of strings. And the last example, we learned about arrays. Arrays are used to store a bunch of data. So here you have like an integer array of A. Once you have an integer array of A, what happens is it will create those boxes. If you have like 6 numbers, it will create 6 boxes and it will label them as A of 0, A of 1, A of 2, and so on. Then you can retrieve those numbers or you can assign value to those boxes as shown in this example here. You can loop through an array two ways. You can either use a regular for loop and you can find the length of the array by using this a.length, or the easier way to loop through an array is using a for each. When you use a for each, you say like integer, you put some variable name in the array name. So every time it loops through in the for each statement, it will take the value one by one. The first time in this case temp var will be 10, the second time the temp var will be 20, and so on. It is not required to declare the array and initialize it with values. We can first declare the number of elements in an array and later on assign them values, like x of 0 equal to 10, x of 3 equal to 50. If you do not give initial values for an integer array, it will take it as a default 0. For double, it will take it as 0.0. As part of a review, let us try a few sample programs. The first question is, calculate the tax to be paid by a person earning $45,000. We have like a salary range given here and a tax rate. So let us write a program to calculate the tax that this person has to pay. Let us create another folder and let's call this folder day1.exercises, and in this let us create another class and let us call this class as exercise A. Make sure that you exclude all other programs. Remember, there can be only one class with the main method in your project, so you have to make sure that you exclude all other programs. So here we have a main method with double salary equal to 45,000. Now there are different ways to solve this problem, so let us do the simple if then else statement and try to solve this. So here we have a double salary equal to 45,000 and then I have declared like a double tax. Now I'm checking if the salary is less than 8,350, calculate the tax as 8,350 times 0.10, that is 10%. If the salary is greater than 8,350, it will come here, and if it is less than 33,950, it will come here, and we can calculate tax as the first 8,350 calculated at 10%, then the difference between the salary and that 8,350, that particular range we have to calculate it at 15%. Else if it is greater than 9,350, then we will go to the else statement where the first 8,350 is calculated at 10%, then the difference between the 33,950 and 8,350 is calculated at 15%, and then rest of the salary is calculated at 25%. And then we can print the tax, console.writeLine tax equal to tax. Let's run this. So for 45,000, the tax that needs to be paid is $7,437.50. You may ask me a question like, is there any way we can input the information instead of hard coding the salary value? Yes, we can do that. So I'm going to print out like a write line to the console, please enter salary, and then I'm going to have a string input which is going to read the next line. So here you can see that the string input is going to read whatever is entered in the console. Now when we enter some number into that particular console, it will be a string and we have to make sure that we convert that particular string into a double number. So we can use the convert class and we can call the convert.toDouble and we will pass the input. Now if you run this program, what will happen is whatever we enter into the console will be sent to the input, and that particular input is converted to a double value and passed as the salary. So here you can see that please enter salary. I'm going to enter 45,000 and press enter. So here we can see that we are getting the same answer. The next review question, given a string array, compute the sum of these numbers. So here you can see a string array which contains numbers, but they are all in the form of text, that is they are within double quotes, so they'll be assumed that they are text. So back in our folder, let us create another class called exercise B, right click, add class. Make sure that our previous exercise A is excluded from the project, otherwise the main methods of exercise A and B will clash. So right click, exclude from project. Once you exclude, if it disappears, you can always see the hidden classes by clicking here and clicking on show all files. If you click once, it will go away, and if you click again, it will show up all the hidden files. Also, in this particular Visual Studio, if you have too many classes open, you can just right click here on one of the class and click on close all but this. So it will close all the other classes and keep the one which you're working on open. So in the static void main method, I have the string array. Now the first step is we need some variable to hold the total. So I have something like double total equal to 0.0. Now we have to loop through this string. So we can loop through an array using a for each statement. For each string temp in strings. So every time temp will have one value of string. The very first time it will be 3.14, the next time it will be 3.87, and so on. And total will be equal to total plus. Now this is a string. We have to convert it to a double number. So we can use convert.toDouble and pass the temp. And once we are out of the loop, we can print out console.writeLine total equal to total. Now let's run this. So you can see that the total is 152. Of course, you can write total equal to total plus this particular number as plus equal to convert.toDouble. Now this is a short way of writing total is equal to total plus whatever this value is. So this completes exercise B. Our next question is, for a given string a equal to hello world, print out the world in lowercase. So I have created a new class called exercise C with the main method, and I have a string a equal to hello world. Now I need to print out this particular substring called world. So the index number of W is, it is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. So W is at the 6th position starting at 0. So a dot substring of 6 will produce the world. So you can see that world has been printed. But since the question requested everything in lowercase, all we have to do is say dot to lower. Now this particular a dot substring of 6 will be converted to a lowercase and then printed to the console. Next, let us take a look at the concept of class and object. Now, if you have done any kind of programming like Fortran or COBOL, and you are given a problem like calculate the total pay of an employee by adding their salary and bonus, how would you go about doing it? So we will have something like this. So given a situation where we have the employee's salary and bonus, we will like add up the salary and bonus and then print the total pay. Or if you have done some COBOL or Fortran, we may call a method or a subroutine here. So here if you notice, we are taking the input of salary and bonus, and then we are calling some kind of a function or subroutine to calculate total pay, and then this function will calculate the total pay, and then we will print the total pay. So this used to be the old way of writing programs, a kind of a top-down approach. The program starts at the beginning here and then it ends here, and then you run this program again and again for various employees. Like for an employee like Alex, we will take a salary and bonus, we will call this function which will calculate the total pay, and then we will print the total pay for Alex. For Linda, we will run this program again, we will get the salary bonus, and then we will call a function to calculate the sum of salary and bonus, and we will print the total pay. But in object-oriented programming, the same program of calculating total pay is written in a different manner. In object-oriented programming, there is first something called as a class. Now, don't worry about what a class is. Now, this class will have those two data, that is salary and bonus. And then it will have this function or what they call a method, which will calculate the total pay by adding the salary and bonus. So here you can see that what happens is there's a class called employee which has like two data. that is like salary and bonus, and then it has like a kind of a method which will add up the salary and bonus and print the total pay. Now in some other place we will have some kind of a main method where we will create employees like this, like employee Alex, Linda, John. Now if you remember, this syntax is very similar to this like integer x comma y comma z. Like we have integer x comma y comma z, we will have employee Alex comma Linda comma John. Now if you remember, when you say integer x comma y comma z, that means x can hold an integer, y can hold an integer, and z can hold an integer. That is, you can assign some integer to x, you can assign some integer to y. Same way, when you look at this, when you say employee Alex comma Linda comma John, that means Alex can hold an employee, Linda can hold an employee, and John can hold an employee, just like x can hold an integer and y can hold an integer. So what does it mean by holding an employee? Now when you say int x, that means x can hold an integer, and when you say employee Alex, that means Alex can hold an employee. That means Alex will have his own salary, will have his own bonus, and will have his own calculate total pay. That means you can say Alex dot, since employee has a salary, Alex will also have a salary. Dot salary equal to say 90,000. Alex dot, since employee has a bonus, Alex will also have a bonus 20,000. And since employee has a method called calculate total pay, Alex will have a calculate total pay method. So what happens now is, when Alex calls this calculate total pay method, it will call this method called calculate total pay, and it will add up the salary and bonus. But whose salary and bonus will it add? Since Alex is the person who calls this particular method, it will add up Alex's salary and bonus, that is $90,000 and $20,000, and it will print out over here 110,000. Same way for Linda, Linda will have her own employee. That is, Linda is a type of employee, so Linda will have access to her own salary, her own bonus, and she can call her own calculate total pay. That is Linda.salary, and Linda can call her own calculate total pay. So over here, when Linda calls calculate total pay, what happens is it will come here and it will add up salary and bonus. Whose salary and bonus? Since Linda is the person who called this method, it will add up Linda's salary and bonus, and it will print out $120,000. This Alex, Linda, and John are what you call objects. This Alex, Linda, and John are what you call objects. So what is an object? So an object can be defined as a copy of a class. So if you notice, Alex is nothing but it has a copy of the class employee. Because employee has salary and employee has bonus, Alex will also have a salary, also will have a bonus, and Alex will have its own copy of calculate total pay method. Since Linda is a type of employee, that means Linda has a copy of employee. That means Linda will have her own salary, her own bonus, and her own calculate total pay method. So an object can be defined as copy of a class, and some people even call it instance of a class. So if that is the case, what is a class? A class is a template for an object. A template, the meaning of template, if you remember, like if you use MS Word document, you can create new documents from like templates, existing templates, and then you can type in your own letter. So same way, this is nothing but a template. You create copies of this class employee, and then you assign your own data for each and every object. So a class is nothing but a template for an object. Now what does a class usually contain? This is called data. This double salary and double bonus is called data, and this is called a method. So a class usually contains like data and methods. It will have multiple data and multiple methods. So a class contains data and methods. Now let us look at another example. This time I will have a class called box, which will have like two data, length and width, and which will have a method. So if you look at this class box, it has two data, length and width, and it has one method called calculate area, which basically multiplies the length and width and it prints out that particular area. So to make use of this class, I will create objects of this class. So here I have created two objects of this box class, that is UPS and FedEx. And since UPS is a type of box, UPS will have its own length and width, and FedEx will have its own length and width, and UPS will have its own calculate area, and FedEx will have its own calculate area. So here you can see that UPS, since it is a type of box, UPS will have a length and I'm assigning 10, and UPS will have its width assigned as 5, and when UPS calls calculate area, it will multiply the length and width and it will print the area. But whose length and width will it call? Since UPS is the one which called this method, it will use UPS's length and UPS's width and it will print out 50. The same thing when FedEx calls calculate area, it will use FedEx's length and width and it will print out the area. So this UPS and FedEx are called objects. So what are objects? Objects are nothing but copies of this class. Each and every object has a fresh copy of this class. It has a fresh length, fresh width, and a fresh calculate area method. And a class has data and methods, and it is a template for objects. So let us try out the two examples that we saw, that is the employee class and the box class. Let me first exclude all the other class files. Right click on the class file, exclude from project. The reason is we can have only one class with the main method in our project. Now let me collapse all these other folders and let me create a new folder by right clicking on the project, add new folder, and we will call this folder day2.examples. Let me first create the class called employee. Right click on the folder, add class, employee. So let us create the class called employee with the data of salary and bonus and a method of calculate total pay. For creating a method, make sure that the method name starts with a capital letter like this. This is what you call a Pascal case, where you start the first letter with a capital letter and the other words also will start with capital letters. Now, I'll have to put the words like public void in front of this method. Now don't worry about what this public void means. We will see about that later. I'm also going to put the keyword public in front of these data. We will see about public and private and all those access modifiers later. And in this calculate total pay, we are going to add the salary and bonus and we are going to print out the total pay. So we now have the employee class with the data salary and bonus and a method called calculate total pay, which adds the salary and bonus and then prints out the total pay is equal to total pay. So now we will create another class with the main method where we will create these objects like Alex, Linda, and John. So right click on day2.examples and create a new class, and we will call this class as test employee. And in this test employee, we will have the static void main method. So in the main method, let us go about creating the various employee objects. To create an employee object, the syntax goes like this: employee, like some object name Alex, equal to new employee. Now this is the syntax for creating a new object. Same way for creating the Linda object. So now we can start giving the salary and bonus for Alex and salary and bonus for Linda and call those methods. So we can say Alex dot, here you can see that once I put the dot, the salary should pop up. If it does not pop up, that means that means there can be something wrong with the employee class. Make sure that you have saved your employee class. Also make sure that the employee class salary and bonus are defined as public. So here you will have like Alex dot salary, and after we give the salary and bonus, let us call the Alex dot calculate total pay method. Similarly, we will assign a salary, bonus, and call the calculate total pay method for Linda. Now let us save this program and run this. Click on debug start without debugging. So here you can see the very first printout is 110,000. That means when Alex called calculate total pay, it went and added the salary and bonus of Alex and it printed out total pay equal to 110,000. When Linda called calculate total pay, it added the salary and bonus of Linda and it printed out $120,000. Next, let us try the box class example. I'll exclude the employee and test employee classes, and let me create a class called box. In this box class, let me have the two data, length and width, and the calculate area method. So in the calculate area, we are going to multiply the length and width, and then we are going to print out area equal to area. So let us go create objects of this box class. So to do that, we will create a test box class with a static void main method. So let us create a few boxes. Now we can also create boxes like this: box UPS, FedEx, and then we can say UPS equal to new box. So you can create box objects like this by declaring them here and then saying UPS equal to new box and FedEx equal to new box, or you can do that in one line like we did in employee by saying employee Alex equal to new employee. You could have said box UPS equal to new box. So here let us define the length and width of UPS. So here I have declared the length and width of UPS and I'm calling the calculate area, and I'm doing the same thing with the FedEx object too. So now let us save and run this. So when you debug start without debugging, you will notice that when UPS calls calculate area, UPS's length and width are multiplied with each other. That is 10 and 5 is multiplied with each other and area equal to 50 is printed out. And when FedEx calls calculate area, FedEx's length and width are multiplied with each other and that area of 35 is printed. Actually, there is another way to look at the concept of class and object by looking at a table. Imagine you have a table called employee with these columns like employee name, salary, bonus, and total pay, with these records like Alex R with a $90,000 salary and bonus of $20,000 and Linda B record. Now, how do you translate this particular table into classes and objects? If you take a look at this particular class, your table name becomes your class name. Like if you have a table called employee, you create a class called employee. Your column names become your data. For example, employee name column will usually have some text, so it is string employee name. Salary and bonus will have decimal numbers, so you'll have like double salary, double bonus, and double total pay. So you create a class and these columns become data. Now columns like total pay may be calculated columns in your database, like you may have to create a procedure or SQL statements or triggers to fill these columns. So those kind of procedures or SQL statements have to be programmed in CSharp. So you create methods to do that program. So you create a name for this particular procedure or a method like calculate total pay, and here you specify how to fill this column. This column will be filled by adding salary and bonus. So you just put this total pay. This column total pay is equal to salary and bonus. So we have now translated this particular table into a class. These records are nothing but objects. For example, for this particular record which represents Alex, we will create an object like employee Alex object equal to new employee. And all the elements of this particular record, we have to put them as properties. And all these elements of this particular record are represented like this. Like Alex object, this particular record's employee name is Alex R. This particular object's salary is 90,000. Alex object salary is 90,000. This particular object's bonus is 20,000, and this particular object, if it calls calculate total pay, what will happen is it will calculate the total pay for this particular record. It will call the total pay method and it will add the salary and bonus for that particular record, and it will print out 110,000. The same way for Linda's record, we create another object called Linda object, and we specify Linda's employee name, salary, and call her own method which will add up her salary and bonus, and it will fill up total pay. So if you are new to object-oriented programming and if you're wondering like how do I create classes, how do I create methods, the easiest way if you're given a problem is to visualize them in the form of tables. So if you can visualize any problem like how you will solve it using tables and records like this, then it is very easy for you to create classes and objects like these. So here I have translated the particular table into a program. I have all these columns and I have this method which adds the salary and bonus and prints out the employee total pay, and I have these objects which represent each and every record. So let's run this, and here you have your answer. Now that we have seen the concept of class and object, let us take a closer look at methods. This particular method calculate area multiplies the length and width and prints out the area. You see something called as a void in front of this method. What does this void mean? Void means this method returns nothing. But what do you mean by returns nothing? Can this method return something? Yes. Like for example, I can say something like return area here. That means this method will now return the area. Now we will see what it means to return, but for now just remember that this method returns area. And whenever you have a return statement here, you have to put the data type of this variable that is being returned. For example, in this case, area is of double data type, so you have to put the word double. So when you say public double calculate area, what it means is that means this method returns some variable of type double. Since we are returning area and area is of type double, this will be like double over here. If this had been int, since we will be returning an integer, you will have to put integer right here. In what way does it change the program? What happens if this particular method returns this particular area? What happens is this particular method, if you remember, is being called over here. This UPS object is calling the calculate area method, and this calculate area is printing the area. But when you say that calculate area is returning area, you can have something like say int total equal to ups.calculate area. So now what happens is when UPS calls calculate area, the area is calculated and it is printed here, but the result is also sent back over here, and that 50 is being stored in this total. And over here I can say total plus equal to fedex.calculate area. When you say total plus equal to something, it means total equal to total plus. So now I am adding up all the areas here. So here I am printing console.writeLine total area equal to total. So now what happens is when UPS calls calculate area, it returns 50, and then it comes here, and when FedEx calls calculate area, this one returns 35, which is added to 50. So total area will be like 85 being printed right here. So let's run this. So you can see that area equal to 50 for the first one, area equal to 35 for the second one, and total area equal to 85. So you see the advantages of methods returning a value. You are returning a value right here, you are storing it in some variable in the main method, and then we are adding up all the values. So a method can return a value. Next, we are going to look at the concept of passing arguments. Passing arguments are nothing but methods accepting values. For example, you see this method called calculate area. It can accept some values like this. So here this calculate area is accepting two values like say integer L and integer W. And I may want to calculate the area as L times W. So now that this method accepts two values, how do we give those two values? In the test box, when you call ups.calculateArea, you can pass those values of L and W here. So in this case, 3 will be L and 4 will be W. The same thing goes over here. I'm going to say something like 5, 6. The 5 will go into L and 6 will go into W. So now let us run this program. So 3 times 4 equal to 12, and then 5 times 6 is 30, and you can see that the total area is 42. So this is what we call passing arguments. You can pass values to that particular method. And when you pass those values 3 and 4, it will go to this L and W and it will come here and make use of those particular values. Now for example, instead of having L and W, imagine I have length and width. And here I say length times width. So now if you notice, this is also integer length and here we have another integer length. And we are planning to multiply length and width. In the test box, we are giving the ups.length as 10 and ups.width as 5, and over here we are giving the values as 3 and 4. Now before we had these values, we know that when ups called calculate area, it took 10 as length and it took 5 as width and it multiplied and gave the answer as 50. But now 3 and 4 are also called length and width. So when you multiply length and width, which numbers will it take? Will it take the 3 and 4 available here, or will it take the class level data, that is the 10 and 5? Now to answer that question, it will always take the local data. It will always take the passing arguments. The way to find out is you can double click on this length and you can see that it highlights the passing argument. Let's run the test box. So even though the passing arguments are also called length and width, it has ignored the class level data of 10 and 5 and it has taken the passing arguments of 3 and 4. And you can see the area of 12 being printed. Now you may ask, what happens if I want to use this length and width, that is 10 and 5? You can make use of the class level data. This is what you call the class level data by using the keyword this. When I say this dot length, and you can see that right now if I highlight length, it highlights the other length over here and it ignores the length in this particular passing argument. And I say this dot width, it takes the length and width that is being set for the object, that is 10 and 5. So let's run this, and here you can see the result as 50, area equal to 50, area equal to 35, because it has ignored the length and width that are passing arguments and it is taking the class level data. So this keyword is used to access the class level data, and if you do not use this keyword, it will take the passing arguments. Next, let us look at the concept of constructor. Before I explain what a constructor is, let me define it. A constructor is a method that has the same name as the class. It is executed when an object is created. It is used to set the default or initial values of an object. So what does all these things mean? So let us do an example. Let me exclude the previous classes. And let me create a new folder. Let's call it day2.constructor. In this, let me create a class called smallbox. And let's have the length and width and calculate area method. So here you have a class called smallbox with the length and width and a calculate area method, which will multiply the length and width and print out the answer. And let's create a test box. And then in the test small box, I'm going to create two objects like FedEx1 and FedEx2, and which have the length and width, and then I'm going to call it the calculate area. Now let's run this, and you have the answers of area equal to 30 and area equal to 30. Now if you notice, imagine I have like hundreds of these objects like FedEx1, FedEx2, FedEx3 and all those things, and almost every box is of the same length and width, that is 6 and 5. If that is the case, I feel like giving these values again and again, which are basically the default length and width for all boxes, is redundant. Why should I keep entering the same values? I need to enter values only if they are different, but if they are not different, let us go with the default value. So how do I give default values? So constructors help in giving us default values. So let us create a constructor. I can create a method like this, public small box, and in this I can specify some length and width. I will say length equal to 6, width equal to 5. Let me have some printout here, say like constructor fired. One thing, if you notice in this particular method, there is no return type including void. A constructor does not return anything including a void. It will simply have a public and some method which has the same name as the class. Now what is the use of this constructor? A constructor is used to set default value. Now if we go back to test small box, and if we comment out this length and width, and if we run this particular program, you will see that the area is still 30 and 30. The reason is, whenever you created an object of small box, then the constructor will be fired. Let us revisit the definition of a constructor. A constructor is a method that has the same name as the class. A constructor is a method which has the same name as the class. It is executed when an object is created. So where exactly is the object created? When I'm creating an object here called smallbox FedEx1, that means at this point of time the constructor is executed. This particular method is run when that object is being created. You don't have to call this particular method. So when this method is run, when the object is created, length is equal to 6 and width equal to 5 is being assigned, and then it also prints out constructor fired. So now when you call FedEx1.calculateArea, you really don't have to give any values because the length and width have been automatically assigned, so calculateArea will multiply the length and width. So constructors are useful for setting default values. So I can create any type of object here, and you'll notice that it will take the default length and width. So a constructor is a method that has the same name as the class. A method that has the same name as the class, it should not have any return type or any return value. It is executed. This method is executed. You cannot call this method explicitly. You cannot say FedEx.smallbox. You cannot call that method like that. It is executed automatically whenever an object is created. And we learned that we create objects here when we say smallbox FedEx equal to new smallbox. And the use of a constructor is to set some kind of a default value. So if you feel that all the values are the same for the object, you can just use that to set default values. You can also have constructors like this. So this particular constructor smallbox takes in two values called length and width, and we are going to accept this passing argument, and we are going to set the length and width here, that is class level length and width. So we are going to say this dot length, that is this class's length is whatever being this class's length, this length is whatever is being passed, and the class width is the width that is passed as a passing argument. So we have another constructor here. which takes in a length and width. So how do we call this constructor? This constructor is called whenever an object is created. So how do we call this constructor? This constructor is also called when an object is created, but you have to pass the length and width like this. If you say something like 3, 4, that means when FedEx2 is created, it will see that, okay, 2 numbers are being passed. Which constructor accepts 2 numbers? This constructor accepts 2 numbers, so it will call this particular constructor, and 3 and 4 are passed. So let's run this. So you can see that for the very first one, since no values are passed, the length and width were 5 and 6. For the second constructor, since 3 and 4 were passed, it called the second constructor. And the last object, since it did not pass any values, once again the default constructor was called. Now let us look at what makes a language an object-oriented programming language. Now languages like C, Visual Basic, Java, C++ can also create classes and objects like this. But still, only languages like Java and C++ and C# are considered object-oriented programming languages, and C and Visual Basic 6 are not considered object-oriented programming languages. Do you know the reason why? Well, for a language to be considered an object-oriented programming language, it has to satisfy 3 rules. The rules are encapsulation, polymorphism, and inheritance. C and Visual Basic 6 satisfies encapsulation and polymorphism, whereas Java, C#, C++ satisfy all rules: encapsulation, polymorphism, and inheritance. So that is why languages like Java, C# and C++ are called object-oriented programming languages, whereas C and Visual Basic 6, even though they can also create classes and objects, they are not considered object-oriented programming languages. Now, under encapsulation, there is a concept called data hiding. Under polymorphism, there are concepts like overloading and overriding. And under inheritance, there are concepts like abstract classes and interfaces. Let us take a look at all these concepts one by one.